Hi there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Market, here with the recap video for the Market Monday video that was just published over at the Rogue Deck Builder. So if you're looking at a more in-depth discussion for what we're going to be talking about here, go over to the Rogue Deck Builder channel and click on the Market Monday video. So in short, what we talked about there is I think that we can now start speculating into singles again. That's why I haven't been very active on this channel. It's been ruthless for the singles market. I think all the money has been going towards sealed, and we haven't really had the utility players. What I mean by that is actually people playing the game, and that actually has a lot to factor into who actually invests in or actually purchases singles. So up to this point for the past 2 years, I think people have just been putting all their money into Secret Layers and all of the plethora of products that have just been really, really good products like Commander Legends, like Time Spiral Remastered, like Modern Horizons 2, all the Double Masters, Ultimate Masters. All of those things have actually come out very recently in the scope of things, but we're starting to see the utility players, like more people playing Commander. People are back in their local game stores. We had the announcement of Pioneer for the Pro Tour coming out, and we actually have Standard that's starting to pick up in paper play, where it seems to me that singles is now something that you can invest in, and they'll actually start going up in value. Like I said, it's been brutal for the past couple of years for this, and that's why I kind of gave up on my spec calls. Now, a little bit of a spoiler here, not really a spoiler, a preface here. These are soft specs. And when I talk about speculating in Magic the Gathering, my channel is more geared towards people that are trying to trade in their collection or just trying to manage their collection, not really make thousands of dollars on flipping cards. This is something that takes a lot of hours. You have to be really good with fees and shipping and things like that to really maximize your profits. And there's always people I always tell people that want to get into this that there are people that are willing to work for nothing. Selling on eBay and TCG Player, and you don't want to compete with those type of people. So my channel is more geared towards people that want to manage their collections, maybe buy a few of these spec cards and then trade them away for cards that they need later on. And you can do that at your local game store successfully. I've had stories in the past of where I had my entire collection stolen, and I was able to trade my way back into modern decks and commander decks and whatnot, just through savvy speculating and savvy managing of a collection and trading back and forth at my local game store. So this is geared towards that. This still can be a strategy for flipping on Card Kingdom or Troll and Told. I have made a pretty penny by speculating into cards and then selling them later at buy list. That's a bit tougher though, because buy list of course will never be selling at market or buying at market. So you're already going to be taking like a cut on how high the buy list can go. So this is a discussion for another day. Again, these are topics I've talked about in the past for the Rogue Market channel, but if you're new here, that's what my channel is mainly geared towards. All right, so in this video, we're going to be talking about one rare. That's the goal of this video, is talk about one rare, the top rare from every set that I think are good soft spec. Now, let me define what a soft spec is compared to a hard spec. A hard spec is something that, wow, we have an announcement coming out. We have a commander that's coming out that's using, let's say, dungeons. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, this dungeon card that works off dungeons is 25 cents. And it's going to go in this dungeon-based deck that they're printing because it's not included in this commander deck. And everyone's going to be putting this in the deck. Okay, that's a hard spec. You know it's going to go up. You know the demand's going to be there. Now is the time just to buy, and eat up all that supply. Soft spec is not that. Soft spec is just something that you'll foresee in the long term, a card that is really at its low, its all-time low, that's going to take a long time to go up. Maybe a few other situations need to occur for this card to go up. And you want to just be slowly picking it up. You don't want to be your own worst enemy by buying out a card, making it go up in value, and not be able to find those deals. Like if you become your own competitor when buying cards, you're not going to be able to buy at that price point you want to buy them. And that's a lesson I learned, is I'd be a little bit too aggressive on cards when I had all the time in the world. And you don't want to strip that supply so quickly that then when new sellers list, they list at a higher price than they would list if you would have just bought a few here and there. So you want to be looking for deals. You want to be looking for cards that are under the market price right now, not at, not above, under the market price, and start picking these up. You have all of these, even the sets that are going to rotate here within the next few months. Well, I guess in fall, you still have time. You still have time to pick these up. So that's the difference between a hard spec and a soft spec. All right, so let's just jump into the video. The first set that we have is going to be, of course, Kamigawa. Kamigawa is still very, very new. There is still lots of supply out there. People are still buying sealed product like crazy for this. And so this is another card where I think you do have all time in the world. And this is Kenshin Crucible of Defiance. This card I am just in love with because it can just go in any commander deck. There is no problem of just any red deck. You can just throw this in. There's no downside to this. Blood Moon doesn't really affect it. I guess Back to Basic does. I guess that anything that destroys their basic, non-basic lands does. But I mean, you're the red player. That's usually what red does, and that still it's not that big of a liability. So you can either have this be a legendary land that adds a red mana, or just make 2/1/1s. And what deck? That's the same kind of philosophy I have for the cards out of Zendikar, like the Agadeem's Awakening and all those other cards. Is why not? Even if your commander doesn't really synergize with 1/1 tokens, why not? This is just an upside to a land. There's really no downside whatsoever to it, as commander's just one-ofs anyway. And the minuscule downside of being a non-basic over basic is not that big of a deal. So Kenshin Crucible Defiance, I think, is not going to be able to hold at this $2 price tag. If you can see here, it actually does see play in Pioneer and Modern, and that is also something that's very, very good for this card, because it's going to be able to and also the effect of the graveyard. Even a bigger upside that I didn't talk about is just channeling this into the graveyard. There are plenty of recycle decks that then can use this out of the graveyard. So keep that in mind too. These cards have so much synergy with those other implications that a new commander that works off the graveyard comes in. And there you go. You got another card that works with that card. So anyway, but the double dipping, the triple dipping with Pioneer and Modern and Standard too is very, very good for this Kenshin Crucible Defiance card to be able to long-term go up above this $2 price tag. And if you look at some of the other ones, like the blue one is like $7. They're expensive. And if we go over to EDH Rec, doesn't see as much as the other ones see play, but 7% of decks is pretty good. In 4,878, this is a top-tier card out of Kamigawa for a rare, and I think that it's going to go up in the long term. Again, these are going to be cards that are going to take quite a while to go up in value, but eventually they will. And again, you want to be very, very slow on picking these up. I wouldn't come here and buy all these ones I'm going to buy everything up to $2. I'd be just taking off this, sneaking off the lowest one over and over and over for the next few months. When you see one that goes, see one for like $1.25, or you put a big buy list over at Cardsphere. That's the way that you spec into these cards. So do like this card. The spread isn't very good right now at Card Kingdom, but it is still a worthwhile card that I think you should be picking up. Next up from Crimson Vow, this is Voice of the Blessed. This isn't a card that sees a ton of commander play. It does see a fair amount, and it's not really seeing any play in Pioneer. But this is a casual. This is another element of Magic the Gathering that I've often ignored, and it's the casual players. Casual players exist. We're not even talking about commander players here, like casual commander players. We're talking about people that build 60-card decks. And one of the most popular ways to play 60-card decks with casual players is life gain. And you can see some of these cards that were in, I think there was one out of War of the Spark that was only in the Planeswalker deck. That was just a strictly worse Ajani's Pridemate. It's like $4 or $5 for that uncommon that was only included in that, because of people just putting those in their decks. And this is a Voice of the Blessed, is one of the most powerful Ajani Pridemates ever printed. Once it gets the 4 counters, it gets Vigilance and Flying, and then once it gets up to 10, it gets Indestructible. Very, very powerful card. I am a Soul Sisters player. Love the deck to death. It doesn't quite work in Modern anymore. Pioneer, it really hurts from not having the symmetrical Soul Sisters, the ones that work off your opponents too. I don't know, Wizard of the Coast won't print those anymore, but if they ever do get slotted into Pioneer, I think you have a pretty good Soul Sister deck that will actually be competitive now with the Ajani's Pridemates and Voice of the Blessed. This, in my opinion, is just a strictly better Ajani's Pridemate. And Ajani's Pridemate at one point I thought was like $1 uncommon, and so I think that this will start to go up in value as time goes on. It's one of the better cards in the life gain strategies out there that's ever been printed. And look at Card Kingdom, though. That's what's kind of interesting about here is we do have the Card Kingdom spread, I believe, if we can pull it up here. So $3.99 at Card Kingdom, and they're actually paying $1.80 or $2.34. So again, this is something that is just very, very telling of the casual crowd, because I do consider Card Kingdom like the catnip for casuals. That's where they go. They consume a lot of content on YouTube that then links to Card Kingdom. Like all of your casual favorites are linking to the Card Kingdoms. Your competitive ones, they still have the Channel Fireballs, the Starseed Games, those sort of things. Casual players, they go to Card Kingdom. These casual cards get bought out. And they start to get stripped. Another interesting thing that you can look at here is the sales data from TC Player, and you want to see something like this. You want to see more than a dozen cards being sold in a day. And look at all these ones. That's pretty good. That is a pretty good path of this being stripped out of the supply, and eventually these prices will go up. We can go back to, I forgot to show that one from the sales history for yeah, look at that one. That's beautiful. A whole page full of today's being sold. A bunch of 1-ofs and 2-ofs, but still, as this is showing that these things are moving and they are cards with real demand. And typically, those are the type of cards that are going to go up in value long term. All right, on to the next one. This is going from the Midnight Hunt. This is Galvanic Iteration. This card is just power level insane, and is one of the reasons why I chose this one is it's an upgrade to the Hidden Strings deck. So this is still a Pioneer Challenger deck. Is the Lotus Field. That's what the deck is called. And I do not believe that this was in this. The Galvanic Iteration is not in there. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. And so this is a card you need to actually, so let's actually pull this deck list up, by the way. This is and of course the first one I pull up doesn't even show it. So let me find one. Okay. So this is one that it's just a 1-of in this one. I've seen it all the way up to the 4-of in some of these decks though, but this is something that does need to be upgraded, and typically those are pretty good indications of a card that will start to go up if there's like a pre-constructed deck. Now I'm actually pulling up a lot of these that aren't even using it, but I have seen a list that has been running quite a few Galvanic Iterations before, and there are other decks that are currently running it in the Standard and in the Pioneer. The Izzet Phoenix deck does from time to time. We have plenty of cards in Standard, and it is something that is just a huge throw into any sort of spells-based strategy in Commander. If we go over here to the Commander, is being played in 4% of all the Izzet decks, which again, typically you don't want something this low in a 2-color deck because it's even less eligible than a 1-color deck. If you're looking at like artifacts or lands, 4% is actually very, very high, and that's a card that I look at. But I think that the Galvanic Iteration being able to be played in Modern, Pioneer, Standard, and as well as being very, very good in many, many different decks for Commander. Every time they print a blue-red spells deck, this is going to be a card that's going to go in there. It's one of the best flashback or copy spells that has flashback that they've ever printed, and I think that this card is going to age very, very well. Again, we can look over here at the sales data, and it does seem to be purchased at a very high level at the moment, with multiple copies being sold. Yeah, there's a big 5-of there. See, someone's actually following my little advice here. Listen, look at this soft spec, a 71 cent right there. They bought it for us. They were able to pick that one out when it was listed. You don't even see any 71 cents here. I guess there's a couple 75. So another thing you can do too is you can find one seller that has these, shipping just a 1-of and find a big cart. That's another way to do it. And we do have a nice little spread here too over at Card Kingdom with $2.79. And then them paying for $1.30. So we actually have a little bit of arbitrage right now that if, for example, that person that got it for 71 cents could then go flip it right to Card Kingdom for a small amount of profit. And I've actually done this successfully. I did it with Arclight Phoenix, bought copies at like $1.50 all the way to $4 and then sold them for $12, I think, to Card Kingdom. It's been a long time since that one. But I made like $400 or $500 off of something that just took a couple clicks. A little bit of investment, couple clips, packaged it all up, got my money pretty quickly. And that is another strategy you can do for hard specking. Soft specking is something that you can do as well, but you have to be very, very patient and just slowly start to remove the supply of these cards. All right, on to the Adventures of the Forgotten Realms. I'm picking Zorn because treasures, I think that Wizards is just addicted to treasures. If everyone knows me, I hate treasures. I think that attaching a lotus petal on stuff is just bad for the game. It warps the curve. It warps the kind of the fact that treasures add for any mana color. It's the color pie gets warped. I don't like treasures, but people seem to like treasures, and Wizards of the Coast really likes treasures because every set in the past, every set in Standard has treasures, doesn't it? Does Zendikar have treasures? I think that almost every set though does have treasures, and a lot of them have had a huge focal point on treasures, and a lot of Commander decks too have just continued to print for treasures. So Zorn, just creating an additional treasure token, just gets better and better and better with more cards printed. That's another thing you'd always look for with soft specs, is a card that might not be there right now, but it's going to take like 1 or 2 cards to make this card, like what if a Commander comes out that then does X, Y, or Z, or in this case, throws out treasure tokens. Okay, Zorn's going to be an auto include in that Commander deck. And so those are the type of cards that you look for that just, need a little bit of help or just get better and better with the more cards printed out in the in Magic the Gathering. So if we actually look at the sales data is quite strong too for Zorn with lots of purchases, and EDH is actually seen playing 4%. Again, pretty low for a red card, but 4% is still, anything over 3% typically goes up in value. And then when you look at Card Kingdom, and it actually does have that nice spread too. They're selling it for $1.30, $1.69, and I mean it's close to that right now on TCG Player. So there might be some opportunity for some arbitrage, especially if the buy list does go up at Card Kingdom. Another thing you can do too is look at the quantity of how many they want, and that's how bullish Card Kingdom is. And so 73 is a pretty bit of kind of a midpoint. If Card Kingdom is really wanting them, you can often see their prices can go up if they want like 140 copies of it. Then you can see that they're really starting to sell out of their supply. I don't know what the number that Card Kingdom tries to have on stock, but it is around that, I believe, around that 200 copies. All right, on to the next one, which is, this one was tough. I have to be honest about Strix Haven, is most of the cards are mythic and uncommons. This set just has a lot of uncommons that see a lot of play in various sets. But I did choose Semester's End. And Semester's End, for the main reason, is this trajectory is looking pretty good. So it was around 40 cents up to 78 cents, and it's just been going up slowly. And as you see here, it just sees a lot of play in Commander. It is an enchantment, or it works with, no, this would not work with enchantments. I think another different card. This one works with Planeswalkers, and it works with creatures, and it's actually can save you from board wipes. And I think that a lot of players are going to like playing this in Commander. It almost feels like a Teferi's Protection. Not as good, of course, but for 4 mana, you get exile your creatures, and not only do you get exile them, but you get some sort of benefit with coming back +1/+1 counters. I mean, very popular in, I'm assuming Atraxa is one of them that, wow, as I say that, Atraxa doesn't even use it. But I mean, it'd be like a good card to throw in Atraxa because it double dips, saves you from board wipes, puts 1/1 counters that can be proliferated, and also can save Planeswalkers. You can do some pretty nutty stuff with Semester's End too by buffing up your Planeswalkers, or having them enter with another. So using their negatives and then having them come back in with an extra loyalty counter, and then start them towards their old. So there's a lot of some dirty things you can do Commander with Semester's End. If you have the mana, of course, you can board wipe and exile your own board. That's, of course, a very popular thing that many commanders do by giving things like Indestructible. This is another way to do it with, which is an additional 4 mana. So if you look over at the sales data for TCG Player, you can actually see this trajectory is looking pretty good. And the sales data is, pretty fair too. We don't see any 4/3s here on this first page. You can even load more sales data if you want even to go higher. And you can see this is a card that is sold pretty often here on TCG Player. Card Kingdom doesn't really have much of a spread here with $1.49, paying 38.49 cents for credit. And it does see only 2% in EDH decks, so that is very, very low for a card. Well, I mean, it's still actually pretty good. But comparative to other cards I like to be more bullish on, 2% is not something I look for when looking for EDH rec data. Alrighty, so on to the next one, which is Kaldheim. And this is a card that's banned in most things, but man, oh man, does this card see a lot of play in Commander. I think this card being banned in so many other places is why the price is quite low for this card. So you can look at all these Commander decks that it does see play in, and it is another card that has very decent sales data. Like, again, 4/5s and 4/4s. And we go over here to the Card Kingdom. $2.99 is what they're paying for it, and are selling it for, and they are buying it for 75 cents or 98 cents, which again isn't the greatest for you're looking for that kind of spread on the TCG market price. But the T-Ball Trickery are just seeing so much play, 7%. That is something you look for. 7% of all eligible decks are running the T-Ball Trickery. That's a very, very high number for a card. You can actually compare it if you go over here to cards by color, red, and you can see like the top cards. So Chaos Warp in 30%. We're already, so Tibalt Trickery is going to make it here then, isn't it? Let's see where it's at. Tibalt Trickery should be above this. Where are we at, Mr. Tibalt Trickery? Huh. I am not seeing it. It should be right here with these other Kaldheim cards that they have, but up there it is. It says 6% on this one, 7% on the other one, but 6% on this one. But it is on the first page here of cards that see play in Commander, and that's very, very strong. That's something you definitely look for, because these cards do go up in value, because that is just every new Commander deck is stretching one out of the supply, out of the supply, out of the supply. And so yeah, this is a very, very good card to start speculating in, and right now is a very good time with Kaldheim. Really at the end of its rope here. I don't think many people are buying much Kaldheim. There's not a lot of collector's editions out there still. And yeah, I don't know if it's gonna be another printing, if this will be the last supply of it when this wave is out. All right, that leads us to last and actually probably least, because this was another set that was very, very hard to pick one, and this is Zendikar Rising. And Zendikar Rising, I picked the Thieving Skydiver. Thieving Skydiver is a very interesting card because it's just a Soul Ring Stiller, and I think the more people that have this played against them, they're going to want to actually put this in their blue decks. This is something that you could justify running in any blue commander deck because of the ability of just stealing the Swiftfoot Boots and Soul Rings is just a huge upside for any deck. I'm unsure why it doesn't go in some of the ninjutsu decks, as this is another perfect card for ninjutsuing because of the evasion, and then you can then get even more value out of then putting it back into play and stealing another artifact. Very, very powerful card. The whole reason with what's kind of rough about Zendikar Rising, though, is the lottery cards have just pushed down the price of everything out of the set. And so rare that even sees play in 4% of the deck. It's got a lot of more work to do, even from something like from Strix Haven, with like the 2% card that I showed. The spread I think was also quite lackluster. I didn't even pull it up in Card Kingdom yet because I think it was right there, a TCG player with $1.49 from Card Kingdom, and they're like buying it for like a quarter or 13 cents or something like that. But if we do look at the sales data is still pretty strong here for the Thieving Skydiver. And so it is another card too that Commander sees play in Eureka. It does see play in. That's pretty good. Any card that goes in Eureka, I think, is a good card to spec in. It doesn't see the most play in Eureka. Does have a modern sideboard, it looks like, though. That's kind of interesting that it does see play there. And it's got that going for it, and it also has two very relevant creature types, Merfolk and Rogue. Rogue has been being supported more and more with each passing set. The Rogue was a class, a subtype that wasn't for a long time. You saw it in like Lorwyn, and they ignored it for quite some time, and now we're starting to see a resurgence of them. They had the whole Rogue theme in Core 2020, or is it Core 2021? Yeah, and then they've had that be one of the classes in the Zendikar. We have the Commander coming out that's also going to have the party theme to it, and so that is a very relevant. Merfolk's been relevant since the beginning of Magic, and so it's got that going for it too. It's going to go in those tribal-based decks with every new Commander that's printed in Merfolk or Rogue. All right, so there you have it for the cards that I think are good soft specs. Again, you have all the time in the world to be speccing in these. I don't think any of these things you should be like buying out places. You can be looking for those that are under market value and then should be targeting them. So I'm going to try to start going back to my daily specs too, because I think we can actually start doing that again. Like I said, the main reason that I was very inactive in this channel is, man, everything was just super busy on my end with my business, as well as the whole singles market was just terrible for buying cards and selling them. It's just the reprints were just out of this world, and we just didn't have those utility players, is what I like to call them, that were actually stretching out the supply, or their demand was outstretching the supply. I hope you enjoyed this video. This has been Kevin with the Rogue Market. Thanks for watching.